So it's time we invite Janet. Janet, our new associate member in 222. So hi, Janet.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah.
Very
Uh,
nice to meet you.
okay. Janet, before we start, can you give a brief introduction of yourself,
Okay.
like your previous job, and then what subjects or what modules you have taken?
Some background about myself. I actually graduated from a law degree back in the UK. The reason why I decided to take these exams is because after I finished my law degree, I wanted to do something other than just like qualifying as a solicitor. So I realized that chartered governance and company secretary is actually something that a lot of law graduates would consider, not just in Hong Kong, but also in the UK and other parts of the world. And my other alternative is actually thinking about working in compliance, anti-money laundering. And I think a lot of you may actually be pretty much aware with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine these few months. A few years ago, I decided to enter the company secretarial profession, and I joined a professional firm, which I've been staying on for 4 years. And so once I started my career in the company secretarial field, I realized that I actually need to start preparing on how to get qualified. So at that time, it was still the days that we could choose the IQOS route. But since I know that the route is going to change, and I just started my job, I thought I would just concentrate on my job first. But at the same time, I also enrolled for Hong Kong U Space course. So I started working like in a professional firm. So I did more company secretarial work. So I enrolled for at that time, it's called corporate secretariatship. So there's no compliance. So I joined Hong Kong U Space course with absolutely no knowledge, no background. And I remember the tutor was Mr. Francis Yun. And so it was the first week I started my job, and I started the courses at the same time. So a lot of things you mentioned, I had no idea, but when I applied them into my job, I started to understand, oh, like they link together. So what I'm learning in class is relevant to my job, and what I'm learning in my job is relevant to my class. So for the first few months, I was not thinking about the exams. I was just focusing on my job, making sure I understand as much as possible, if not everything. And so I really plan my studies. I plan how my time management and how I want to grow in my career. So that's how I started back before 2019.
Okay, from what you have shared with us, it's very good that indeed when you study what previously called the corporate secretaryship, indeed it's a compliance subject because you comply mostly of the company's ordinance, and that you can also apply it in your day-to-day work. So it is a double benefit. You prepare for your exam as well as you learn for your day-to-day work. Okay, so you study the subject first, and then you didn't take exams. So how, when you take your exams, and how do you feel? You have a previous study. Do you find that when you just do like a revision, does it help you? And how about the other modules?
So CGQP actually started back in January 2020,
Yes.
but I remember it was COVID. So June 2020 exam that was cancelled. So
the June one, yes.
Yes. So I didn't start until November 2020. So because it was still a few years, I mean around 2 years, I did the course. I actually enrolled for the course again, just to refresh my memory. And I understand that the syllabus actually changed quite a bit. So I enrolled it again. And this time I did all the courses. I mean, how to complete the course. I enrolled for the exam techniques workshops, and I finished all the assignment and mock exam requested by the Hong Kong U Space. So yeah.
Do you find that by completing while you study, also do some assignments and the exam mock papers helps you to prepare for your actual exam?
Yes. So actually, I don't think the exams are easy, but I remember that sometimes I didn't really have the time to study like 5 to 6 months before each exam. Like I only spent around 2 to 3 months for each exam. So when I see a question that I don't know in the assignment and mock exam, I won't panic, and I would refer back to my notes. So I understand that that is a important part of it's important part of the syllabus. So it actually really helps. So I don't just really think about, okay, I'm in an exam condition, I need to complete this, but really I refer back to my notes and I just start thinking like, if this is a, say, 5-mark question, what are the points that I would include? Because in the exam, the questions may change, or yeah, the questions may change. And I always try to prepare an answer longer, because I remember in the courses, they ask us 5 marks doesn't mean 5 points. 5 marks doesn't mean 10 points. You don't count. You just write as much as you can within the time limit that you think you should give. So yeah, I try to expand my answer as much as possible.
Yeah, so you are also doing like what we advised just now. Give some time to the question. Yep. So 5 marks, so you give more or less like a maximum of 8 minutes. Don't do it more, because you're losing marks if you just put a lot of those answers, and that we allowed you to write in simple sentences. Don't repeat, or if you see a case or a scenario case, don't repeat and copy all the facts again. Need to look into what the stories tells you and what are the weaknesses in those role players. So how you find about the other models apart from this company corporate secretaryship and compliance, and you have taken the CG as well, right?
Corporate governance.
Yes.
I remember for that module, I actually spent a lot of time reading the journals. Because I remember, the journals are actually very useful. And it's actually very difficult. I would say this subject is very broad and definitely impossible to memorize, do a lot of memorizing. So it's a lot of deep understanding and linking the Hong Kong and UK. Like the examiners won't be asking you. I remember one chapter is about the history of corporate governance. The examiner is not going to ask you about those, I can't remember, but like those treaties, the very old ones. They won't be asking you about the name, but they will be asking you to link the concepts. It won't be in the question, but you have to know that, oh, this is something that's expected. And I remember, I think the Appendix 14, the Hong Kong Appendix 14, there were some changes these few months.
Yes.
Yes. So I remember doing the exam last year, around June 2021. And I understood that what are the proposed changes and how are they being discussed across the board. So in the exam, when I see I think a scenario question. When I see a scenario question and I wanted to address those points, I will also add, oh, this is being discussed and what are some of my views and what I have studied. So I think the most important thing, it's not really like you need to understand the question and answer the question, but at the same time, not just answering the question. So you need to expand a bit. And yeah, I mean, speed writing is very important. It's not about memorizing. I think this the whole CGQP is not about memorizing. And I didn't spend a lot of time making a lot of notes, but I make sure that whatever I read and whatever I listen in the lectures in Hong Kong U Space, I try to apply them as much as possible.
Yeah, Janet, actually you bring up a very good point. Again, this is a postgraduate level. So you need, we expect our students have some the basic knowledge with principles, some fundamentals, and then they have to apply that knowledge in solving problems in the questions given. And that, so you will need to know, we don't expect, yes, some students will ask, I can't remember all like company's ordinance, I can't remember every legislation, every of those statutes. But you need to understand why we have that company's ordinance, what they serve, and that what do they want? They want to protect the shareholders and the stakeholders, and that the certain principles, the legal principles. But I will suggest, if students are preparing for these examinations, put yourself into the shoes. You are facing your boss, your CEOs, your department heads, or your board of directors. They're actually asking you questions. Then you need to know how to identify the issues, or that what you understand from their questions, and give an explanation, and then give a suggestions to them. Give them a solutions. But your solutions needs to base on some solid, it's still a compliance. It's still a compliance. Everything is on a compliance. You comply to the company's ordinance, you comply to the statutory rules. And I think one other question you bring out is very good. We are an international body. Corporate governance is an international method. So you don't just remember some basic Hong Kong rules and regulations. It's development and the trends internationally. So that's why our study materials based on the UK study text, and then we give Hong Kong supplements. And one thing I think we can also remind our students is that this examinations is actually taken by 5 divisions, students from 5 divisions, including the UK, Canada, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia. So that you see why this is a portable qualifications, and that some international elements are still important, because in particular governance, we don't invent our rules and regulations. We always share and look from some, like in the UK, Singapore, Australia, or sometimes the US. So we need to have an international perspective, but a good understanding of the local rules and regulations. So are you agree with that?
Yeah. So I remember, especially for corporate governance,
yes.
We don't just study the UK. I remember that Singapore, Australia, even Japan, China.
On some China, we give you a good perspective, because we know that our students are working, and that sometimes you may have to touch on some international perspective, because you may serve clients, or your companies have operations in overseas. So that we want you that you have some guidance or some background in these areas. And so the last one, Janet, any advice from you to our students to prepare for the exam?
So say you decide to do exam in November, like maybe some of you decide to do just 1 paper, 2 papers. I won't advise too many, because I think actually every exam is quite challenging, even though I managed to pass all of them in one go. But still, it's actually very challenging. Plan your time. Some of you may think you're an early bird, so maybe you want to get up a bit earlier every day, or work a bit later at night. But it's very important to plan your time. And the most important thing is not just how much you feel that you are prepared before the exam, but actually when you are in the exam. Because I remember for my case, I actually wasn't very confident for most of the exams. So in the exam, remember, you are given 3 hours. And that 3 hours, you are not going to prove to the examiner and try to get 100 marks. I actually just set my aim to getting a pass, but a pass doesn't mean I just do it like without caring what I write. But for example, I didn't really spare time for doing checking because I think this time is just very limited. So say a 5%, 5-mark question, I time myself nine minutes. I actually remember all those minutes and I write it down next to a question. And for the past papers, I remember for corporate secretariatship, that my first module, the Mr. Francis Yun would allocate, would arrange every topic together, like all the questions over the past 10 years, if I remember. So for my other modules, the lectures didn't do that, but I do it myself. So I think that's also very important. I think Hong Kong students always try to tip questions in the exam. And I think that's very common and normal. And I also do it. And I won't say I recommend you to do it or not, but as time is just limited, it's normal to tip. But remember, even if the whole paper doesn't turn out to what you expect, it's fine. You can still pass. You may still get a merit or even a distinction because you already understand everything. And tipping is just the way you do some time management before the last minute. So yeah, I think everyone can just be confident, even though you don't feel that you're well prepared before the exam. Just remember, when you are given the paper, you have 3 hours to prove. And even if you fail, you can always do it again. So this qualification is doable, and just work hard.
Yeah, thank you, Janet, on giving certain advice, in particular when you are in the examination center. Stay calm and then check when you have the questions to select, check the one you are familiar with. Don't just look into the words, but really the questions itself. And then you write some answers in short form, some notes, so that when you spell out your answers, you know, then you can save time and time each question for 10 marks, 12 marks, or 5 marks, how many minutes you need to, as a maximum, to spend, and leave yourself at least like 5 to 8 minutes. 10 is a very good one to read through your answers, and then you can do some, complement your answers. If you find that something, when we write, we don't mean what we think. Sometimes is the problem. Okay, thank you very much, Janet.